Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome everyone to the channel, and today's video is about one of the greatest companions of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. A man whom which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself sent down the following verses. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ وفصاله في عامين أن اشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير وإن جاهداك على أن تشرك بي ما ليس لك به علم فلا تطعهما وصاحبهما في الدنيا معروفا واتبع سبيل من أناب إلي ثم إلي مرجعكم فأنبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. And we have enjoined upon man to take care of his parents. His mother carried him in weakness upon weakness, and weaning is in 2 years. So be grateful to me and to your parents. To me is the final destination, and I will inform you of what you used to do. These blessed verses have a beautiful story behind them, a story of a young, brave boy, a boy who had to take sides with either truth or falsehood, evil or good. And out of the grace of Allah, this young boy chose to accept the truth, and victory was triumphant over falsehood. This young, courageous, brave boy who was born from a noble family in Mecca was none other than Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardah. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas was still a young boy when the message of Islam was sent to all of humanity, when the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was sent as a mercy for mankind. Yet at his very young age, he showed signs of nobility. Not only was Sa'd a pious boy, but he kept himself away from the distractions that his peers were engaged in. He always was focused, and he knew that he was meant for something great in his life. Not only was Sa'd a wise boy, but he loved his parents, and he obeyed his parents and took care of his mother. At a very young age, Sa'd had, if you like, a calling. He knew that he was meant for something bigger than him, and he was never satisfied or pleased with the misguided beliefs of Ahl Mecca, the people of Quraysh, their polytheism, their disbelief, their kufr. He knew that eventually a light will shine on his people, so that way they may escape their darkness, so that way they may be guided to the truth. Not shortly after the Prophet received revelation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ, and warn your close kindred. He began to call the tribes of Quraysh to Islam, and upon hearing the message of Islam, Sa'd was quick to accept Islam. And once the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, knew that Sa'd accepted Islam, he rejoiced to this great news because he knew that Sa'd had great potential in him. He saw the intellect and wisdom in this young boy, and that he would bring great value and honor to Islam. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas came from a lofty lineage. He was from the Qurayshi family named Abi Zuhra, and Abi Zuhra were related to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, from his mother's side. So Amina bint Wahab, the mother of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, her brothers were from the family of Abi Zuhra, and that is why the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, mentioned that Sa'd was his uncle, and he would say, هَذَا خَالِي فَلْيُرِنِ امْرِئٌ خَالَهُ, this is my uncle, so show me any of you your uncles. He took pride and honor that Sa'd was his close relative. Although Sa'd came from a noble family who had a high lineage in Quraysh, however, he dealt with hardships and difficulties upon accepting Islam. And before he accepted Islam, he mentioned that he had a dream in which he says, "I had a vision in my sleep 3 nights before I accepted Islam. It was as if I was drowning in complete darkness and I was stomping on water. The light of the moon shined for me, so I followed it and found that others reached this moon before me. I saw Zayd bin Haritha, Ali bin Abi Talib, and Abi Bakr as-Siddiq. And I asked them, 'How long have you been here?' And they replied, 'We have been here for an hour.' The following day, Sa'd heard of the news that the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, was calling to the message of Islam in secrecy. And so he knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted good for him. And Allah willed that he accept Islam. And so Sa'd hurried to the Prophet, and the Prophet had just finished praying Salatul Asr. And it was then that Sa'd took his Shahada. And so once Sa'd took his Shahada, he spent the rest of his day with Zayd and Ali and Abi Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, and his vision was fulfilled, the vision that he had before he accepted Islam, in which he saw Zayd and Ali and Abi Bakr, and he joined their company radiyallahu ta'ala anhum wa ardahum. When Sa'd returned back to his family, he found that his mother was full of rage and anger because he accepted Islam. And she said, "O Sa'd, what is this religion that you have accepted? And why has it steered you away from the religion of your forefathers?" And she swore that if Sa'd did not leave Islam, that she would not eat or drink. And she went days without food, and she fell weak. And Sa'd said, "O mother, I love you, but O mother, I swear that if you had 1,000 souls, and each and every soul departed your body, that I will not leave the religion of Islam." And once the mother of Sa'd knew that Sa'd was serious about Islam, and that he was determined to live the very last day of his life upon Islam, she had no other choice but to eat and drink. She embraced her son who accepted Islam. And that is when the following verses were revealed to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن جَاهَدَاكَ عَلَىٰ أَن تُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا وَصَاحِبْهُمَا فِي الدُّنْيَا مَعْرُوفًا. In which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And if your parents force you to associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then do not obey them, but rather befriend them and be kind and gentle with them." There was one incident in the life of Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas, and it was during the Battle of Badr. And the Battle of Badr was the first battle the Muslims ever fought in. And Sa'd had a younger brother named Umayr. He was young, he still not had matured yet, and he was determined to fight side by side with his brother Sa'd in the Battle of Badr. However, Umayr knew that because of his young age, that the Prophet was not going to allow him to fight in the Battle of Badr. So Umayr tried avoiding the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. However, the Prophet noticed Umayr and told Umayr to leave and to not fight in the Battle of Badr. Umayr, upon hearing that, began to cry. And so the Prophet felt sorry for Umayr, and he allowed him to fight in the battlefield. After the Battle of Badr was over and the Muslims won the war, Sa'd returned home. However, his brother Umayr did not return home, and he was considered amongst the martyrs of the Battle of Badr. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas was beginning to show how much of a warrior he was on the battlefield, and he displayed this on the Battle of Uhud, a battle in which the Muslims lost in, and it was due to the fact that they went against the orders of the Prophet and they chose to let their guard down and to leave their position, the position that the Prophet said to remain in. And yet, when they sought the booty of war, they hastened to take it, and that is why they lost the war. And Sa'd shielded the Prophet and the companions, and the Prophet said, "Throw, Sa'd, throw, irmi ya Sa'd, irmi fidaka abi wa ummi, throw, O Sa'd, throw, may my father and my mother be sacrificed for you, O Sa'd." These were the words of the Prophet during the Battle of Uhud, because Sa'd stood his ground and he shielded the Prophet. And Sa'd took great pride in this, and he mentioned throughout his life that he was the only person in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "May my father and my mother be sacrificed for you." One of the greatest moments in Sa'd's life was during the Caliph of Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar was preparing a large Muslim army to fight the Persian Empire, to fight falsehood, and to put an end to paganism. And so Umar called that every single Muslim man capable of fighting, that he show up for this war. And 30,000 Muslims fought in this battle. It was the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, Ma'rakatul Qadisiyah. And so Umar set out to find a Muslim general, a man to lead the Muslim army. The Muslim army all agreed that Umar appoint Sa'd as its general. And so Umar did so, and Sa'd was appointed as the general and the leader of the Muslim army. Before the battle, Umar gave advice to Sa'd, and he said, "Sa'd, do not be prideful because you are the uncle of the Prophet or because you are the companion of the Prophet." And he said, "Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not erase sins with sins, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala erases sins with good deeds. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not look at our lineage, and that rulers and followers alike are equal in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that only taqwa, fear in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, differentiates between them." And he said, "O Sa'd, follow the way of the Prophet." And so the blessed army was sent forth to battle. Amongst the more honorable companions who fought in the Battle of Badr and who witnessed the conquer of Mecca, and most of them were children of the companions. So the two armies fought, and this battle took place on the 16th year of Hijrah. And on the last day of the battle, the Muslim army fought with ferocity and ended the battle with a victorious finish. The Persian leader was killed and the Persians were defeated. Sa'd continued to live a long life, and when he was on his deathbed, he asked that the same garment that he wore on the Battle of Badr, and he had one request, that his body be wrapped in this garment. And he said, "I wish to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this garment." This was the life of a man who devoted his life for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardah. These are men whom we should take a lesson from their lives and study their lives, because they were men who devoted their lives to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, men who knew Allah and His Messenger, men whom the Prophet himself loved and mentioned that they were the greatest of men, the greatest of generations. As the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Khayru qarnin qarni," the greatest generation is my generation, ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ, and those after my generation. هذا والله أعلم. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.